So what I've got for you guys today, let's pull it up here. This, my friends, this is an article from the Mediaite that says Candace Owens says Trump will pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. That's right. I know. I had a French person say it's Ghislaine. I'm like, no, she's Ghislaine. For the rest of her life, she's Ghislaine. We all know that. We're sticking it with it. Candace Owens says Trump will pardon Ghislaine Maxwell because he's implicated in Epstein Files. He is being so deceitful, it's incredible. This article goes on to say, Candace Owens told her viewers on Wednesday not to act surprised when President Donald Trump pardons Jeffrey Epstein's accomplice and convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell, arguing the president was implicated in being so deceitful, it's incredible. Who's protecting that right now? Trump, said Owens during a discussion about government files relating to Epstein. Don't even act surprised when he pardons Ghislaine. That would just be foolish of you, foolish of me to think that he's not going to pardon Ghislaine. Okay? Now this is, look, we are in a weird reality, guys. I've seen a bunch of people say, it's weird to find myself agreeing with somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I've seen people say things like it's weird to find themselves agreeing with Elon Musk. And I know all of you had a moment during the inauguration of Joseph Biden when you said, am I actually going to say that Mike Pence did something good? That's where we're at. Because Candace Owens, guys, Candace Owens is fucking nuts. Candace Owens is crazy, and Candace Owens is a grifter. And when you see people like Candace Owens calling this out, or Joe Rogan calling this out, you have to ask yourself, how low are the people that are still defending Donald Trump and his administration after the amount of evidence that has came out to show that he is implicated in these files? How low are these people? How far down is that bar now? She continued, Trump is implicated by his sheer deceit right now in this moment. He is being so deceitful, it's incredible. And it seems to only be getting worse because now they keep pretending that they're trying to get to the bottom of everything. But they don't actually get to the bottom of everything. They actually seem to just be covering things up. They're making moves that only reveal a deeper cover-up. And we see that when we see Todd Blanche head over to the prison that Maxwell was earlier being held in before she was, sent to a posh Club Med prison, for her capitulation. And she said, nothing Donald Trump has ever done is bad. There was nothing I ever saw Donald Trump do that was bad. And only a moron would think that there is no connection between Todd Blanche going and getting her to say that and then her being removed from a medium security prison and then sent to a low security prison. By the way, something that does not happen. Something that they had to literally bend the rules to have done for her. Owens, who allegedly spoke with the president recently on the phone. By the way, the reason supposedly she spoke to him on the phone was because she's currently being sued by the French president and his wife for saying that the French president's wife is a man. And actually, a lot of these weird MAGA conspiracy theorists believe that not only is she a man, but she's actually her brother. And two UK journalists last year had to pay defamation to Macron after being shown that this, of course, was not happening. And we've seen this over and over again. This is obvious trans hate. This is obviously appealing to people in the MAGA world that are so lowbrow, so hateful, so angry that all you have to do is say, this woman looks as though she's a transgender woman, therefore she is a man. We see it when they call Michelle Obama Mike Obama. They're afraid of Michelle Obama. They're afraid of what would happen if Michelle Obama ran. Because they know that they need to get out ahead of that. They need to talk about that she looks like a man, that she's a black woman. Because if she ever gets on that stage and she ever talks and she ever gives a speech and she ever says that she is joining up and she's going to run for the office, they know they're fucked. So they start with the hate. So once again, that's why she was allegedly Trump called Candace Owens to say, you should back off of that. You should back off of that. I've seen her up close. I think she's a woman. That's his words. I think she's a woman. Because Candace Owens is even further out than most people are, and Trump right now needs deals to be done with the French because he's already looking terrible on all these trade deals that he's getting screwed over on. So, allegedly, she spoke with the president recently on the phone. Then noted Maxwell's transfer to a minimum security prison, which took place just 1 week after U.S. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's failed private lawyer, the guy who literally lost and helped Donald Trump become a 34-time felon. By the way, he is still a 34-time felon, who sat down to interview Maxwell about Epstein's activities. She's already in a low-security prison, but they're now transferring her into an even lower security prison, which is known as Camp Bryant, and remarkably, when questioned about this, Trump says that he didn't even know that that was happening, she said. She then played a clip of Trump claiming to be unaware of the transfer, but such a thing, it's not unusual. It is very unusual for this to happen. It is an anomaly. She continued, the best part of that actually is when he says in the middle, and I'm going to quote it here directly, he says, and I think, referring to Todd Blanc, and I think that he probably wants to make sure that people that should not be involved or aren't involved are not hurt by something. And I think Candace is realizing something I'm realizing here. And when he says people being hurt that should not be hurt, he's talking about himself. He's talking about Donald Trump, as Donald Trump oftentimes does. So she goes on to say, that would be very, very unfortunate and very unfair to a lot of people, he said. And he keeps saying that over and over again. Owens questioned, why does he keep offering that? Well, the obvious answer is because he himself and other people around him would be implicated, and that's the real reason. That's actually him being honest. Like, Todd Blanc's job is to go there to make sure that unfair things don't happen to people that could get swept up in this, and if you're Todd Blanc, how would you do that? Exactly. First of all, Todd Blanc, like I said, he's the one who lost that. Apparently, he's so good at his job, guys. So good at his job that he lost a 34 conviction felony sentence in the cover-up case that Donald Trump was found guilty in. So good, guys. These people literally recreate history. They rewrite it. To Donald Trump, this guy is a winner. A guy who definitely did not lose that case. And the more that we see somebody like Donald Trump talking, the more you see how guilty he is. Because if this was anybody else, and they were not implicated in those files, what they would be saying, no, I'm not in those files. I'll release those files. We'll make sure that the victims are protected, but I have nothing to hide. But instead, Donald Trump says, I don't know. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Never seen the files. It's a made-up Obama hoax. Obama, the Clintons, and Biden, they all got together and wrote fan fiction about me and left it as a ticking time bomb. But the obvious lie in that is the very thing that MAGA themselves are spreading around. MAGA keeps saying, well, why didn't he use that against him? Why didn't Kamala Harris use that against him? Well, if it's all made up, they would have used it against him. But the reality is that there are people that are not part of Trump's circle that are in those files. There's a lot of people, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and politicians, and people across the globe that are implicated in those files. And if you were a person that had nothing to hide, even if your name was in those files, you know what you'd say? You would say, release the files because it will exonerate me. But he will continue, guys. He will continue to stand up there and make excuses because he's scared, because he knows. Why do you think he's doing this thing in Texas right now? Ask yourself that. Why do you think it is? Do you think it's just a political game? Do you think that when Donald Trump calls the congressmen and women in Texas, are there any women? I guess Jasmine Crockett's over there. When he calls him, he ain't calling Jasmine Crockett. When he calls him and says, I want you to redistrict, I want you to gerrymander, something that's supposed to only happen once every decade. I want you to gerrymander, and I want you to get me 5 more seats in the House. Do you think that's for political reasons? Because I don't. I think it's to protect his own ass. Because I think Donald Trump is scared as fuck right now. Because not only if the House turns blue and the Senate turns blue, will they start asking for those files and getting those files and releasing those files and talking about the things in those files. Donald Trump is possibly going to be impeached. Should be impeached. Should be impeached. And he is scared to death. Because if he gets impeached, that's not just he's getting impeached. He's getting impeached when they release all the information. There is one thing that Donald Trump holds in the most esteem. More esteem than anything else. And that is his legacy. He wants this world to believe that he is the greatest president that has ever existed. Regardless of what the political historians have said, that they have placed him, 42 or 45th, the lowest intellect president that has ever existed in American history. Regardless of that, Donald Trump thinks he can still salvage this. He thinks he can still salvage his legacy. And if he loses in November in the midterms, and the House turns blue and the Senate turns blue, he is not only just going to be impeached, but he is going to lose that legacy with, let's say, 80% of the country, because there's still going to be 20% of this country that thinks it's all a lie, that are still going to protect this dude. There's something new that just came out. This was a story on the New York Post that was uncovered from 2007. This right here is an article from 2007 that casts doubt on Trump's Epstein story. Independent journalist Roger Sullenberger uncovered an old New York Post article this week that appeared to refute President Donald Trump's story about when and why he booted convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein from his Mar-a-Lago club. CoffeeZilla has a great video on this, and you guys should watch it. He does a great job of pointing out how the stories don't make sense. That when Donald Trump says that Epstein stole Virginia Giuffre from him at Mar-a-Lago, from his spa, that happened in 2000. The timeline does not add up. If he didn't kick him out until 2007 or 2008, as this article implies, then there's absolutely no way that that's the reason that he chose to do that. And there's a lot of other theories going on online as to why he kicked him out, or allegedly kicked him out, to do with like real estate deals and such. But my personal opinion is Donald Trump never kicked Jeffrey Epstein to the curb. My opinion is Donald Trump may have extended arm's length Epstein after his eviction away from him because he was afraid that he was going to release information on him. And when people say that Jeffrey Epstein was afraid that Donald Trump was going to take his life, I think he meant that. And I think possibly, maybe, Donald Trump succeeded. We're going to find out one way or another about that one. Let's hope that House turns blue and that Senate turns blue. Epstein denies he is banned from Mar-a-Lago and says, in fact, he was recently invited to an event there, Sullenberger noted on Tuesday, adding, it is a crazy line from an October 15th, 2007 New York Post piece. By the way, this is the New York Post, confirming that Trump only canceled Epstein's membership 2 weeks after he agreed to plead guilty. Trump, of course, made headlines in late July when he told reporters aboard Air Force One that he was aware Jeffrey Epstein stole young women working at his Mar-a-Lago club, and that it was why he banned him. Once again, that language is sus. It's a little sus, guys. Mildly sus. Mr. President, Epstein has a certain reputation. Obviously, I'm just curious, were some of the workers that were taken from you, were some of them young women? A reporter asked Trump on his way back from Scotland. He replied, some of them? Were some of the young women, the reporter pressed him. Well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken, and it was the concept of taking people that work. God damn it, he used concept again. I love that. MAGA's like he doesn't use the word enigma. And then they go back and find him using the word enigma. He likes words. This man does indeed enjoy him. For a man who has never read a book, he certainly does enjoy words. He does. Let's try that again. Let's try that again. Well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken. And it was the concept of taking people that work for me is bad. But that story's been pretty well out there, and the answer is yes, they were, Trump replied after a long answer. He was then asked, Mr. President, did one of those stolen, persons include Virginia Giuffre? Trump replied, I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yeah, he stole her. And by the way, she had no complaints about us. Weird thing to say, kind of sus. As you know, none whatsoever, making it more sus. Jeffrey, who sought civil and criminal action against Epstein and his accomplice Maxwell and accused Prince Andrew of abuse, killed herself in April of this year. Trump's comment raised eyebrows at the time as it called into question the known timeline surrounding Trump barring Epstein from his club. Ryan Goodman, an NYU law professor and legal analyst, shared the clip online and noted, here's the very disturbing part of this, he added. The timing and Trump's knowledge. In 2000, Epstein-Maxwell took Giuffre from Mar-a-Lago. In 2002, Trump said the most infamous line about Epstein being a terrific friend and liking younger women, is what that should say. And in 2004, Trump says he ruptured with Epstein. Of course, Epstein later pleaded guilty to underage sex offenses in June of 2008. Goodman wasn't the only one to note the timeline surrounding Trump and Epstein's falling out. SV Date, the White House correspondent at HuffPost, added, Trump on Air Force One confirms that one of the people on Epstein's list that he stole from him at Mar-a-Lago was Giuffre. That was in 2000. He told the NY Mag in 2002 that he admired Epstein's taste in women. The break from Epstein wasn't for another 2 years. Business Insider's Jacob Shamsian praised Sullenberger's finding in the New York Post, but also warned it should be taken with a grain of salt given the source. Well, yeah, we also need to remember that the source that we're currently quoting to say that Donald Trump is innocent of all charges is Epstein's partner in crime and a person that is currently sentenced to 20 years in a prison, apparently now a Club Med, named Maxwell. So when we look at these things, guys, when we see this amount of evidence that continues to grow, it's absolutely mind-boggling. It's straight out of 1984. The party's final act was to convince the voter that they shouldn't believe their eyes and their ears, right? It's so strange to sit up here after 2 years of doing this and watching these things and listening to MAGA talk about the Epstein Files in the manner that they did, to sit here and say to every one of you that there's a distinct possibility that if this House doesn't flip, that if the Senate doesn't flip, that this man is going to get away with quite possibly either at least being a benefactor of or perhaps participating in one of the worst crimes that has ever happened in this country. At no point would me or you or anybody else in this country other than the billionaire oligarchs, and I don't even know if they're immune to this, Will we ever be able to have this amount of evidence being put forth to show our guilt and not be at the least investigated? If you came out, if your significant other died, and you said, well, you know, I didn't do it for sure, but there happens to be a letter that supposedly has my name all over it. But you have to remember, I didn't write that letter. The people that dislike me the most got together and wrote that letter, but didn't show it to you, and instead let me have it. Your ass is going to jail. You might not be convicted. You might not be determined guilty at that point. But I will tell you this right fucking now. You would be awaiting your trial in a prison cell. This is fucking mind-blowing. Absolutely. Absolutely mind-blowing, guys. Yeah, don't believe your lying eyes. Who you gonna believe? You gonna believe all of this evidence from the crooked legacy media? Or are you gonna believe me? The Don? Your buddy? Your friend? The guy who's just like you? And if I was MAGA, I would stop saying this man is just like me as quickly as possible.